Hi, David Wellman here. Very excited about this tutorial. This is a challenging tutorial in the sense that it's going to require from you some discipline to go through all the different steps, but it's very rewarding. At the end of this tutorial, and if you do the work, you'll be able to improvise over any chord progression, regardless of the style. You're going to have a good understanding of your fretboard, a better understanding of how to play all the different shapes, how these shapes are built, and how they relate to the different chord progressions that you're going to play over. We're going to take this very gradually, and I strongly recommend that as we go through the different concepts, you pause the video and you work on whatever concept we're working on. This is going to be very important. This is a gradual course, so if you don't understand any section of this, just spend time making sure that you do understand. A good way to know if you acquired the skills to move on to the next section is to ask yourself the question, can you teach the concept that you just learned to someone else? If the answer is yes, then you're good to move on. If the answer is no, then just keep working on it until the answer is yes, then move on to the next section. As I said, this tutorial is going to teach you how to improvise in any context. It's going to be very freeing because your fingers are going to kind of take over. You're going to be able to rely on your scale knowledge that you will acquire, and your fingers will acquire them, and then you'll be able to build with confidence over these different shapes that you've learned. At first, your improvisations might sound a little bit scholar because you're going to rely heavily on finger positions and shapes, but once the shapes are imprinted in your hands, your ears are going to take over and you'll be able to find a lot of really cool melodic ideas. But at first, we're going to do a lot of work memorizing the different positions so that it's really second nature. Our study is going to be really based on the CAGED system, and it's important to know what that is. The CAGED system, CAGED is spelled out C-A-G-E-D, and the letters of the CAGED represent chords. And remember when you first started to play, you probably learned all the open chord shapes, which you might not use much unless you're playing acoustic, but still you probably learned these different shapes. The C major, A, G, E, and D. Those different chord shapes are very useful because we can organize our fretboard knowledge around these different shapes. These chord shapes are actually movable. It requires maybe some fingering tricks, but they're movable. So if I take, for example, this shape, this chord, you can see that it looks a lot like the C shape, just moved, and the root is no longer C, but it's D, so that's D major chord, played in the C shape position. And I could just move that anywhere I want. The E shape, for example, an E chord, can be played here. Although this is an A chord, you recognize the E shape in there. So this is an A chord played with the E shape. And you can do the same with all the 5 different chord shapes, the standard chord shapes. C, that can be moved. A, G, E, and D. All these different shapes can be moved across the fretboard. And we see these shapes over and over and over and over. And if you look at, for example, the C major chord, the C shape, the C chord, has its root on the 5th string and happens on the left side of that root. On the left side, and I can build my chord. The A chord, the A shape, also has its root on the 5th fifth string. This time happens on the right side of the root from my perspective. And that's why these chord shapes are so useful. You're going to be able to build over these different shapes some scales or arpeggios or ideas that are going to happen on the left side or the right side on different strings depending on the chord shape you're using. So it's very important to be familiar with these different chord shapes. If you're not, spend time memorizing these shapes and spend time being able to play them in different areas of the fretboard, different areas of the neck. So a good way to do that is to, for example, pick a root, G for example, and play the G chord using the 5 different shapes. So a G chord played with a C shape. This is our C shape, so you need to make sure that we're in G. So 10th fret would look like that. That's a G chord played with a C shape. After C comes A, and this would be the A shape for the G. And then we have CAGED, C-A-G. The G shape for G is played like this, or open here. After that we have E, and this is the shape for the E. The E shape for the G chord. And then the D, that's how it's played, and it kind of goes across the fretboard like that. So just get used to that. And once you're ready, we're going to look at some chord shapes, same C-A-G-E-D, but for minor chords. And that can be done with just a one note change. The third, instead of having a major third, we'll make that a minor third to have minor chords. And for these different shapes, we'll have C minor. So instead of having root, major third, fifth, we'll have root, minor third, fifth. And then we can move that to different roots. So that's a C shape for the minor chord. The A, just like A minor, move that along. The G minor shape, move that. The E minor, we all know E minor, move that. And the D minor, which is open like this, and we can move that along the fretboard. So do the same with the minor shapes. If you're unsure of how to play these, I included a PDF with just the triad chords, major triads, minor triads, and the CAGED system layout. Go through these, and in the next section, we're going to talk a little bit about how to organize scales within these different shapes. So I'll meet you in the next section.